Hi, it's Luda here. Join me to listen, learn and reflect. In Conversation with Mothers Producers is a series of interviews with successful producers. All of them are mothers who combine their family commitments with the producing role. I would love to hear their stories about personal and professional journey and ask for advice for any emerging producers or other specialists who are planning to combine their parenthood and career.
I've got two children. The older one is called Billy, and he's 28. And the younger one is Stella, and she is almost 24. Well, let's just go back a bit, because I think the decision to have children or not as a producer is a big one. Mm-hmm. So in a way, the thinking and the leading up to knowing that I wanted to become pregnant and then becoming pregnant, in a way, I think that's part of the story, because it's not easy to imagine when you're not a mother how it will be to accommodate a child into, a full-time working life. My partner is also a producer, and we share a company together. But we work on different films, so sometimes it works that we kind of stagger our productions, and then sometimes it works that they end up, for often reasons outside our wishes or control, that they end up filming at the same time. And that was the case when I discovered I was pregnant with my first child, which was quite, I wanted children, but I certainly didn't plan to have a pregnancy at the moment when I discovered I was pregnant, which was actually the week in which I heard that the finance for my first feature film had been approved. Like, not a great week to also discover you're pregnant with your first child. So the whole of the span of that production, from knowing that the money had been approved to contracting the production, to looking for locations, pre-production, the production, the post-production, all of that happened while I was pregnant. But my son was born before the film was finished. So, so he really was a film baby, and, very much wanted, but the coincidence of those two things happening together, I wouldn't plan it like that. It was very hard. I really belong to a generation of women who, we're just like all feminists, native feminists, and never kind of planned to have children. Very significant careers most of my friends have. We're all, in a way, quite high achieving in different creative paths. And, and then I realized I did want to have children, really in my early 30s. I mean, now they'd say, get it over with before you're 30. But then that wasn't really the message. It was just that the timing wasn't right in my life before that. But I didn't have friends with children. So I actually had no idea. I had no one to talk to who was my kind of peer, who was doing what I was doing, having a child, at that age, trying to continue to work. I think I had postnatal depression for the first year. I think of that year as just living in a dark tunnel. I just could not find the joy in mothering. I mean, I love my son, but I didn't know how to balance. I didn't know what to let go of. I didn't know how to balance what, was essentially an unfinished film with the very physical needs of mothering. I was tired. It was all very unexpected and overwhelming for me.
And with the second child, what kind of situation did you face?
Totally different. Just before I became pregnant, I had applied for a job at SBS, which I really wanted. And then around the time I got the job, I discovered I was pregnant. So this time I thought, I'm going to learn my lesson here. I'm going to take maternity leave. And because it was a proper paid job, was easy to take maternity leave and walk away from the work and just focus on the mothering for, I think, 9 months. And that was a really, really happy, satisfying time for me. And after that, I could leave her and go back to work with that satisfaction that I had, breastfed for 9 months and just devoted myself to her in a way which was, satisfying for all of us, I think. It was an unusual film. It was made in New Zealand. It was called Crush, and it was invited into the competition at the Cannes Film Festival, so there was a lot of attention on it. It was a very big deal. I chose not to go to Cannes because I didn't think I could travel with a baby to the other side of the world and, manage all of that. I just kind of kept going with work. Well, I wasn't a single parent. It was just very messy multitasking. What can I say? There wasn't any scheme to it.
When it was very challenging time, so what kind of motivation or inspiration did you have?
Well, I'm very, very careful about the projects I take on. I always have been. I think of them like a thesis. You've got to love the material, you've got to love the people you're working with, you've got to believe it will nourish you for the length of time it will take you, which in the case of a feature film can be, 5 years. That's kind of normal. So if you don't have those underlying, kind of personal passions in relation to the project, it would, for me, I would feel very resentful very quickly. So I think that's the simple answer to what you're saying. It's like a relationship to your work, but that things have their time and place. And right now, your time and place might be at home, mothering, and that's fine. There's so much to learn and to be grateful for in that experience, and that the rest of your life will unfold in its own time and way. And that was a big lesson for me to learn, because I'm generally quite an impatient person, and had achieved success in my career quite early. And there's a kind of addiction in that. You want to keep going and continue to be successful. But I learned to let go of a lot of things being a mother, actually, and to just let go so as to bring in something which I discovered was more enriching. There's no magic to it. It's just being human, and responding to the things that feel most important. In comparison, I've had a marvelous, wholehearted, loving, beautiful time with my children, and valued that time and those relationships much more highly than my career over those years. Even though I've been able to keep working, when I look at everything in balance, and when I get to my deathbed and look back, I won't really have any regrets about my parenting or my love for my children, and it's very mutual between us. And yes, I've made some good films, but I've also made some beautiful children. As I said, I've always been a feminist, and I've chosen to work almost exclusively with women directors. And I've felt that was a really kind of clear decision of mine for two reasons. One, because I felt that I could be the first audience for the story, because it was a story that was about women. And secondly, that there weren't enough women making films, and it wasn't just me. There were other women who were really appreciating those stories, and not all, but some of the films I've made have had quite a lot of success, especially from women. And it's kind of buoyed me on to think that was, the right path for me.
What would you advise to me, for example?
Okay, well, the notion of patience that I mentioned before is particularly significant. Don't try and do everything at once. Think, okay, so maybe for the first 2 years of your baby's life, that's your priority. And then you can sort of start, making some changes. So you have to be constantly just kind of prepared for the unexpected. And I would say make project choices which are viable given what else is going on in your life, mothering included. Well, I'm a very practical person. Only really taken on projects that right from the beginning I thought I can see this happening. I can see a way to finance it. I can see the audience for this film. I just felt very clear about it. And I was never a dreamer in that way. And if that means, as a parent of a younger child, choosing smaller projects or working for a company for a while, that's how it is. It's like you just try different things at different times and, try and make it all work and not bite off more than you can chew. So twice in my life I've had, sort of proper jobs. One was at SBS, as I mentioned, and then now the other one was within the organisation which preceded Screen Australia. So in each case, I learned so much just from being on the other side of the financing, divide, and understanding more how the people who make decisions in financing think, what matters to them, the privilege of seeing many applications from other producers and realising, what's a good application, what's likely to be a successful application, how to present yourself. I would highly recommend that. It can be a relief financially just to have a paycheck for a while. But more importantly, it can really ramp your producing skills up.